I paid my son's rent for 3 years. Then his wife told me I wasn't special enough to attend their wedding. I only asked a simple question. I was standing in my kitchen that morning, the same kitchen where I had spent most of my adult life. The kettle was boiling, the radio was playing softly in the background, and the sunlight was coming through the window in that gentle way it does when you've already lived long enough to appreciate quiet mornings. I picked up the phone without hesitation. "Max," I said when he answered, "have you and Lena decided on a date for the wedding yet?" There was a pause. It wasn't the kind of pause filled with excitement or nerves. It was sharp, calculated, the kind of silence that tells you something is being hidden. Then I heard Lena's voice instead of my son's. "Oh," she said lightly, almost casually, "we got married yesterday." Yesterday. I felt my fingers tighten around the phone. Before I could say another word, she continued, "We only invited special people." Special people. The words didn't just hurt, they froze me. I stood there in my kitchen, unable to move, staring at the wall as if it might explain what I had just heard. My son didn't speak. He didn't correct her. He didn't say, "Mom, I'm sorry." He stayed silent, and that silence told me everything. For 3 years, I had paid their rent, $500 every month without fail. I had bought their furniture piece by piece, a couch here, a bed there, plates, lamps, groceries when their fridge was empty. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself this was what loving mothers did. And yet, on the most important day of my only son's life, I wasn't special enough to be there. I looked around my living room. Lena was sitting comfortably on the sofa I had bought for them, crossing her legs as if nothing had happened. Max stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped, avoiding my eyes like a child caught doing something wrong. In my bedroom closet hung a pale pink dress. I had chosen it months earlier, running my fingers over the fabric and imagining myself standing proudly beside my son. I had bought new shoes to match. I had even practiced smiling in the mirror, wondering where I would stand in the family photos. Photos that would never exist. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking of the clock, replaying those 4 words again and again. Only special people. I didn't know it yet, but something inside me had cracked open. The truth is, the wedding wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the moment I finally noticed how long I had been disappearing. After my husband died, I raised Max alone. I worked, paid bills, packed lunches, and showed up to every school event. I told myself that love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant silence. When Max met Lena, I was relieved. She seemed confident, capable. I thought she would take care of him when I no longer could. Slowly, the requests started. "Mom, we're short on rent this month. Renate, the car needs repairs, just until we get back on our feet." I never said no. I canceled trips. I skipped dinners with friends. I learned to stretch $1 until it nearly broke. I thought love was something you proved with money. A week after the wedding, my phone rang. It was Lena. Her voice was different now, softer, urgent. "Renate," she said, "the rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening to evict us. You forgot the transfer." Forgot. I closed my eyes. I saw the wedding photos I wasn't supposed to see. Lena in white, her parents smiling, glasses raised in celebration. I took a breath. "Lena," I said calmly, "didn't I tell you? I only help special people." Silence. For the first time in years, it wasn't me trembling. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my bank statements spread out before me. I added everything up. $33,400. Money taken from my retirement, from my husband's savings, from my future. I cried, not from sadness, but from anger. And when the tears stopped, clarity arrived. The next morning, I went to the bank. I canceled every automatic transfer. When the manager asked if I was sure, I looked him in the eye. Yes, I said, I'm sure. My phone rang all day. I turned it off. That afternoon, I came home to find 3 cars parked outside. They were inside my house, with a lawyer. They said they were worried about my mental health. That was the moment I understood the truth. They didn't love me. They wanted control. I didn't have much time to sit with my decision. The moment the money stopped, everything else began. That first night, after I canceled the transfers, I sat alone in my living room with the lights off. The house felt unfamiliar, as if it were waiting for permission to breathe. For years, this space had been a waiting room, waiting for phone calls, for emergencies, for demands. That evening, my phone stayed silent. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, the calls started. Max first, then Lena, then Max again. Voicemails stacked up like unopened bills. At first, their messages were confused. "Mom, call me. There's been a mistake." Then concerned. "Renette, are you feeling okay? You didn't answer yesterday." By the third day, concern had sharpened into irritation. "You can't just cut us off like this." I didn't answer. On the 4th day, I came home from a short walk and saw 3 cars parked in front of my house. My heart skipped. Max's car, Lena's car, and a third one I didn't recognize. They had keys. I had given them keys years ago, believing that trust was something you showed without conditions. I stood outside for a moment, my hand on the door, steadying my breath. When I walked in, the scene stopped me cold. Max was sitting on my couch with his head in his hands. Lena paced the room, her movements sharp and restless. And at my dining table sat a man in a gray suit, flipping through papers. My papers. "What is going on?" I asked. All of them looked at me as if I were the intruder. Lena rushed toward me, her voice trembling with urgency. "Renette, thank God you're here. We were so worried." Worried? Max stood up slowly. "Mom," he said, "we went to the bank. They said you canceled everything. You even blocked our access." Before I could answer, the man in the suit stood and extended his hand. "Mrs. Richter, I'm Mr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being." Mental well-being. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked to the table and gathered my documents, stacking them carefully, as if order might protect me. "These are private. You have no right to them." Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Renette, sweetheart, we think the loneliness might be affecting you. At your age, confusion happens." Confusion. The word rang in my ears like an alarm. That was when I understood. This wasn't about love or concern. This was about control. "I'm not confused," I said evenly, "and all of you need to leave my house now." Mr. Fisher adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Richter, if your children believe your decision-making is impaired, they have the right to intervene. Guardianship exists to protect people in your situation." Protect. Lena's voice cracked as she spoke again. "We're just trying to help you manage things better. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway." There it was, the truth spoken without shame. I pointed to the door. "Out." Max looked at me with something close to anger. "You can't do this, Mom. We have bills, responsibilities. You can't just stop." "Yes," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "I can." They left with wounded pride, not remorse. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I didn't cry. I planned. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Mr. Weber, and he specialized in elder rights. After listening quietly, he said something that changed everything. "What you're describing," he told me, "is elder financial abuse." The words felt heavy and validating. We canceled access, changed accounts, changed locks. I installed cameras, not out of fear, but clarity. When Lena called again, her tone had shifted back to sweetness. "Renat, we can fix this. We made a mistake. Let's have dinner. Like family." "How much do you owe in rent?" Silence. That answer told me everything. "I'm done," I said. "You made your choice." I hung up. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself. A haircut, a long walk, coffee with a neighbor who listened. And as small as those things were, they felt revolutionary. But I didn't know yet how far Lena and Max were willing to go. I was about to find out.
I thought I had seen the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks after they left my house with that lawyer in the gray suit, I received a thick envelope in the mail. The return address was a family court. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were legal documents filled with words I never imagined would be used against me. Petition for guardianship. My son Max was asking a judge to declare me mentally incompetent. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once planned birthdays, holidays, and small surprises for him. Now it held papers that questioned my sanity. According to the petition, I was confused, financially reckless, and easily influenced by outsiders. They claimed I had become paranoid, that I had isolated myself, and that I was incapable of managing my own affairs. I read the pages again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. I hadn't. My own child was trying to take control of my life. I called Mr. Weber immediately. "This is serious," he said, after reading the documents. "They're asking the court to assign a legal guardian. If they win, Max could gain full control over your finances." The room felt smaller. "But I'm fine," I said. "You know that." "I know," he replied calmly, "and we'll prove it. But be prepared. This is going to get ugly." Ugly was an understatement. In the weeks that followed, everything in my life was scrutinized. I was ordered to undergo medical evaluations, cognitive tests, psychological interviews. Doctors asked me to repeat numbers, remember words, solve simple math problems. I answered every question patiently, even when the humiliation burned. One doctor smiled kindly and said, "Mrs. Richter, your results are excellent for your age." For my age. Meanwhile, Max and Lena built their case. They submitted statements from people I barely knew. A neighbor who had complained about my friends parking on the street. A pharmacist who had been misled into signing something he didn't understand. They even claimed that installing security cameras was proof of paranoia. Paranoia. As if protecting myself after being threatened were evidence of madness. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of losing my money, but because I was mourning. I mourned the boy I had raised, the boy who used to run into my arms when he had nightmares, the boy who promised he would always take care of me. Somewhere along the way, love had turned into entitlement. The day of the hearing, I dressed carefully, not to impress anyone, but to remind myself who I was. 72 years old, a widow, a mother, a woman who had managed her life with integrity for decades. When I walked into the courtroom, I saw Max sitting beside Lena and their lawyer. He looked uncomfortable, like someone wearing a suit that didn't belong to him. Lena looked calm, focused. This was business to her. Their lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, Mrs. Renata Richter has shown a sudden and alarming change in behavior. She has cut off her family financially without explanation, installed unnecessary security systems, and isolated herself from loved ones who only want to help her." I listened quietly. Then Lena testified. She cried as she spoke about how worried she was about me, about how I had become distant and hostile, about how I refused help. When my lawyer cross-examined her, her story began to crack. "Mrs. Richter, when was the last time you called my client without asking for money?" Lena hesitated. "I don't remember exact dates. And is it true that you excluded her from your wedding?" "It was a small ceremony." "Is it also true that you told her only special people were invited?" Lena looked at the floor. Then Max took the stand. Seeing him swear to tell the truth felt like a knife in my chest. "My mom has always been generous, but lately she's been irrational. We think she's being manipulated." "How much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" my lawyer asked. Max shifted in his seat. "I don't know exactly." "Does $33,000 sound accurate?" Silence. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly and walked to the witness stand. I told my story. The rent, the gifts, the wedding, the threats. I didn't stop giving them money because I was confused. I stopped because I finally understood that I was being used. The courtroom was silent. The judge listened carefully. After hours of testimony, he left to deliberate. When he returned, his voice was steady. "Your Honor, Mrs. Renata Richter finds no evidence of mental incompetence. The request for guardianship is denied." I closed my eyes. I had won, but the price was something I would feel forever.
Winning the case did not feel like triumph. It felt like exhaustion. When I walked out of the courthouse that afternoon, reporters were not waiting. There were no dramatic scenes, no apologies, no reconciliations. Max and Lena left through another door, speaking urgently to their lawyer. My son did not look back. I stood on the courthouse steps for a long moment, breathing in the cool air, letting it settle inside me. For years, I had imagined that if I ever stood up for myself, someone would finally understand, that Max would see what he had done, that he would come to me and say he was sorry. That did not happen. And strangely, that was when I felt free, because I finally understood something I should have learned long ago. Closure does not always come from the people who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from accepting who they really are. In the weeks after the trial, my life grew quiet. Not the anxious silence I had lived with before, waiting for the next call, the next crisis, the next demand, but a clean, honest quiet. I changed the locks for good. I updated my will. I closed accounts that had once been shared out of trust and opened new ones in my name alone. I installed the cameras permanently, not because I lived in fear, but because I had learned that peace is something you protect. I also did something that surprised even me. I stopped explaining myself. When distant relatives asked what had happened, I didn't defend my decision. I didn't list the money I had given or the sacrifices I had made. I simply said, I chose to take care of myself. Some nodded in understanding. Others looked uncomfortable. That discomfort was no longer my problem. A month later, I sold the house. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I had walked through every room slowly, touching the walls, remembering birthdays, Christmas mornings, and quiet nights when Max was small and asleep down the hall. I said goodbye with gratitude, not regret. I moved into a smaller apartment near the city center, close to parks, museums, and cafes, filled with people who lived, not rushed, not desperate, just present. For the first time in years, no one knew me as Max's mother. I was simply Renate. I took art classes twice a week. My paintings were clumsy at first, but they were mine. I traveled. Nothing extravagant, just trips I had postponed for decades because someone else always needed something more urgently than I needed myself. I donated part of my savings to organizations that protect older adults from financial abuse, not out of anger, but out of purpose. I had survived something many never do. I never heard from Max again. People sometimes ask me if that hurts. The honest answer is yes. There are nights when I still think of the little boy who used to wait by the window for me to come home from work. I miss him. But I have learned to separate the child I loved from the man he became. Love does not require self-destruction. Sacrifice does not mean surrender. And motherhood does not mean lifelong obedience to someone else's demands. On quiet evenings, I sit on my balcony and watch the city lights come on one by one. I drink my tea slowly. I breathe. I think about the woman I used to be, the one who believed love had to be earned, paid for, proven with suffering. She did the best she could with what she knew, but she is gone now. In her place stands someone older, calmer, and finally honest with herself. My name is Renate. I am 72 years old, and the most important lesson of my life came late, but not too late. True love never demands that you disappear, and choosing yourself is not selfish, it is survival. If you are listening to this story and feel a quiet ache in your chest, you are not alone. If you have ever given and given hoping that one day it would be enough, you are not weak. And if you are standing at the edge of a decision that scares you because it might disappoint others, remember this: you are allowed to protect your dignity. You are allowed to say no, and it is never too late to choose yourself.